Welcome back, everyone. It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and today we're finally going to discuss the preliminary hearing for Ethan Crumbley's parents, the parents of the Oxford shooter. They had a preliminary hearing where the state put on all the evidence it intends to call against the parents, and at least enough to show that there is probable cause for this charge and for this case to go to trial. And they do this in front of a judge, and the defense attorneys and the defendants are present and able to question the witnesses as well. So a lot of you asked for this. I haven't had time for today to really dig into this and watch and listen to a lot of this testimony and see what was said. And actually, as I have gone through this testimony, my mind was kind of changed from the beginning of the hearing to the end of the hearing, and we'll talk and see if any of you agree or, as usual, disagree with some of my takes about what this evidence was that was presented in this preliminary hearing. But before we jump into the preliminary hearing, make sure you subscribe to our page and like this video and comment any questions you have throughout the video below. We are not going to watch the 2 days of testimony here on today's video. Instead, I'm going to summarize a lot of the testimony and tell you what I think it means and what this preliminary hearing is and why they have it in Michigan. A lot of states have different variations of what a preliminary hearing is. And in some states, it's a lot more important than others because this gives the opportunity for the defense to see what evidence the state has. Some states don't have open discovery like Florida. Florida has open discovery, but they also have some cases where you have a preliminary hearing. Other cases, the probable cause for the arrest and the charge are just done by affidavit. But in Michigan, they have this preliminary hearing, and the defense was able to question these witnesses. And the defense was able to see how these fact witnesses and law enforcement officers would be as witnesses at trial, should this case get there. Now, as you can imagine, most preliminary hearings end and result in the charges going forward and there being enough probable cause for this charge in this case to go to trial. Very rarely does a case get thrown out after the preliminary hearing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the witnesses that testified during this 2-day preliminary hearing. First, there were a few witnesses that testified that were friends of the Crumbleys. And they testified that the Crumbleys thought Ethan was weird and different and not a normal kid and didn't do things that normal kids wanted to do and was troubled. And to me, none of what they confided in their so-called friends rose to the level of criminal behavior or of criminal negligence or that they should know that their son was going to shoot up a school. All of the testimony from the friends was pretty vague and could be taken out of context where any parent complains about their kid or any parent that thinks their kid's maybe a little weird or a little odd, which it seems like Ethan was. So none of that to me rose to the level of criminal negligence. Next, we heard from some people that worked with the defendants. Most importantly, the boss of Mrs. Crumbley, who, if you can remember, when they went in with the guidance counselor for that meeting, they said to take Ethan home, and they both said they had to get back to work. Well, her boss testified she did not have to get back to work. There was a meeting, but it was voluntary, and she would not have been punished had she missed the meeting. Now, in hindsight, of course, that's what the boss is going to say, but any of you that have jobs know you don't want to miss a meeting that your boss calls. So again, to me, did not rise to the level of criminal conduct or even criminal negligence. Next, there were a lot of text messages discussed throughout with the boss, with law enforcement officers that took things from Ethan's phone, from the Crumbley's phone. But some of the damning text messages were that she knew it was Ethan when the school shooting happened. She was worried he was going to kill herself. She needed money to get a lawyer. Those types of texts that seem damning, but to me, again, don't indicate criminal behavior. Just because she thought at that moment maybe it was her son, it doesn't mean that she could go back in time and say, wow, I should have seen the signs. To me, at that point, based on that evidence alone. There was even a text message that said, I wish we would have seen the warnings. That was a terrible decision. Ethan's a good kid. Things like that, which again, parents want to believe their kids are good. Parents don't want to believe their kids are capable of this. Does that make them criminals? Are we going to criminalize the parents of teens or kids that commit suicide? Should they have seen the signs if they were depressed? Are those parents not allowed to have guns in the house? Those are questions we need to answer in these cases. And again, to me, at this point, based on the friends and the employment people that were testifying in this preliminary hearing, to me, you could say this about a lot of parents that have depressed kids. And to me, it did not rise to the level of criminal behavior. But as we get in to testimony from the guidance counselor and the law enforcement officers about what happened the day of the shooting and what they found at the house, coupled with some surveillance video at gun ranges and purchasing of the gun and records of how they purchased it and who was there when they purchased it, my mind started to change. And track with me here and let me know if you agree or disagree, either of which are fine as long as we do it respectfully in the comments. But at this point, just knowing he's a troubled kid and knowing he may be depressed, to me, does not make it criminal behavior. But when you start to get into the pictures he was drawing with, graphic pictures of people dying, if you look at his journal where he was apologizing and saying he had ammo ready and he had access to the guns, and he was saying, "I'm sorry, I hope my parents can forgive me." Now, we're not sure how much of this the Crumbleys were aware of, but we know that they were aware of the drawings that happened in school. We know that they were aware that he was depressed. But in his journal, he said, "My parents won't listen to me. They won't take me to a therapist." There were times when his dad said, "Here, take some pills, suck it up." And again, I think a lot of this evidence shows that the Crumbleys were bad parents, but does it rise to the level of criminal behavior? Because bad parents that want their kids to push through depression or are, struggling to make ends meet and they have to push through and they're worried about work and they're worried about a lot of other things, are we going to criminalize that behavior? To me, still, we're kind of teetering on that. But when the guidance counselor tells you that there's suicidal tendencies here, suicidal thoughts, suicidal talk, they should have taken him home, but they didn't. And that, in connection with what happened before around the gun, start to lead to the criminal behavior, in my opinion. Because there was also testimony that when James Crumbley, the dad, purchased the firearm, Ethan was with him. And they had firearms for themselves, and all indications point to the fact that they bought this firearm for Ethan, which would have been illegal based on his age. And James Crumbley signed something where he bought the gun that said he knew it was illegal to purchase this for somebody else. And we have surveillance video of Jennifer Crumbley, the mom, and Ethan Crumbley, the shooter, at a gun range, where Ethan Crumbley is seen shooting the firearm with Jennifer Crumbley. Now, that doesn't prove that they bought the gun for Ethan necessarily, but that is circumstantial evidence that they showed Ethan how to use the gun. They knew Ethan knew about the gun. They maybe bought the gun for Ethan, all while knowing he's a troubled kid who has suicidal thoughts and tendencies. He's depressed. They know he's taking medication. They're even giving him medication. They're not taking him to a therapist. They're not pulling him out of school when he's having really bad days. Now we're getting closer to, you should have known. There were way too many indications. It would not have been so hard for you to take a step to take him out of school, to take him to a therapist, to take the gun away from him, to hide the guns from him, which they clearly didn't do. He had access to these guns, as we know, and he obviously accessed them with the ammo. He was searching ammo on his phone. And when you put all of this circumstantial evidence together, you put the decisions that the Crumbleys made before with the purchase and use of the firearm, and after not doing anything when we know they at least knew about some of these troubling tendencies for Ethan. To me, that is how you make a case for criminal negligence and the involuntary manslaughter charges that they have in connection with the shootings that Ethan and the killings and the murder that Ethan committed. And I think a lot of this testimony is damning. And to me, at the beginning, where I had my hat on, my unbiased hat, just looking at it, saying, yes, bad parent, bad parent, bad parent, as the testimony went on and as I heard the facts, bad parent, horrible parent, negligent parent. They don't care about their son. I wish they cared more about their son, but not criminal. Not criminal until you buy him a gun, show him how to use it, give him access to it, and then step away and do nothing when red flags are popping up and sirens and lights should have been going off in your head. And any reasonable person, in my opinion, would have seen that. Because again, some of the testimony, there was other testimony that I didn't even bring up yet about how, they were asking about their retirement. They were trying to keep their job. They said, just because Ethan did this, please don't fire me. And how could they possibly be worried about that? Why aren't they worried about their son? Again, bad parent, but it does not mean they are criminals. Criminal behavior, to me, surrounds the gun. How they purchased it, why they showed him how to use it, why they gave him access, all while being bad parents and knowing about all the troubles that he's going through. So that was my take on the preliminary hearing, a little explanation as to why you have a preliminary hearing, which I think I may have interrupted myself in the middle of explaining why you have a preliminary hearing, but a lot of the time it is to show that you have enough to get this case moving. And in Florida, there are a lot of different things, like even with DUI, we have the admin review process where we can question the officer about the stop and about what he saw, and it gives us a little bit of an indication, a free depo of the officer, because we can't take depositions in most misdemeanor cases without a court order, basically. So that gives us kind of a free depo in a misdemeanor case. Same thing here. They get to kind of depose these witnesses on the stand, get some under oath testimony locked in that they can use later if the story's changed, if it becomes inconsistent. If somebody is trying to lie and make the situation worse for the Crumbleys, this preliminary hearing can actually help the defense. And it lets the defense know what they're up against, and it helps them build their defense. So, kind of a way to circle it all back there is what the purpose of the preliminary hearing is, why both sides can find it useful, why some states require it because it depends on what their discovery rules are, and what it can mean as the case moves forward. Most of the time, it's granted and the case continues moving forward, and we'll continue watching this Crumbley case and continue commenting on it if you're interested in it, and you can show me you're interested in it by liking the video and leaving a comment about what you thought about this preliminary hearing and whether or not you agree with my assessment. But for now, that's all we've got. Until next time. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.